caution. Your paradigm is about to shift at the intersection of fact and reason. You're entering Kingston Country.
I'm Dan Kingston, and you're listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast. What is the origin of the coronavirus? Because right now, world stocks are tumbling. The Dow, the S&P, all the world stocks, and it's believed that there are hundreds, possibly thousands right now infected in Iran. That's breaking news. Iraq has sealed off the border with Iran. They have some cases. There's other Middle East countries that have cases of coronavirus. It looks like they all came from Iran, who is covering up their coronavirus situation, which is causing stocks to go down. Not just that, but the situation in China, South Korea, almost 1,000 cases now in South Korea. Italy is canceling public events. All this is taking a toll on the world economy, and output is down because factory output in China is basically stopped. And people are concerned on Wall Street now. Almost 1,000 points right now, 964. It's down, it's going up, it's gone down, but it's basically down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds since opening. And we'll see what happens in the next coming days, but I'd say this is just the beginning. The world economy is going to take a real hit. Wall Street's finally waking up to the coronavirus, and it's a little bit too late. They were really rosy and optimistic. Everybody was being really rosy and optimistic about this thing, and some people are still covering up the real damage. Iran is the latest country to really cover up what's happening because they have a politician over there said they had 50 deaths, and then the head government said, wait a minute, there's only 12. So Iran has a problem, and the number of infected have to be much higher than what they're officially saying if they've had even 12 deaths, unless they're just executing people when they get sick, because the rate of mortality is about 2.1, 2.3%, about 1 in 50 people end up passing away, succumbing to coronavirus. So the idea that there's only 60 or 67 officially infected, and yet they have 12 deaths. And again, that local politician said 50 deaths. It looks like Iran's covering it up because there's other cases originating from Iran all across the Middle East. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is the origin of the coronavirus? Again, the official story is the animal market. Anybody that questions that is a conspiracy theorist, although it's starting to turn into just theorist because more and more evidence is coming forward that it's not the animal market, that it's some kind of biolab, possibly the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the only level 4 biolab in all of China that just happened to be located in the city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, known to be studying coronavirus. And now we have this from the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology. They released a new directive titled Instructions on Strengthening Biosecurity Management in Microbiology Labs that Handle Advanced Viruses like the Novel Coronavirus. Okay, so if that's not admission that they needed to step up security at the biolabs, well, I mean, that's what this is. It's admission they need to strengthen biosecurity. Again, it's a new directive by the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology titled Instructions on Strengthening Biosecurity Management in Microbiology Labs that Handle Advanced Viruses like the Novel Coronavirus. Well, there's only one level 4 biolab in all of China. It's connected to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it's located right there in Wuhan. Although there are other labs connected that are around this area. Now, there's a research paper that was written by scientists in China, okay, not conspiracy theorists in America, but actual scientists in China that study this thing, Bo Tao Zhao and Li Zhao, and they're coming from the Joint International Research Laboratory of Synthetic Biology and Medicine, School of Biology and Biological Engineering, South China University of Technology, okay? Also the School of Physics and Haozhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, China, and the Tianyu Hospital of Wuhan University of Science and Technology. Those are the research hospitals or universities, labs that are Bo Tao Zhao and Li Zhao are connected to in this research paper that I'm going to lay out for you and read to you. It's shocking, and it's not getting attention, And this research paper has since been taken down from ResearchGate. But people like Dan Kingston and others copied this research paper before it was removed. And so it's out there still. I'm going to read to you. I'm not going to summarize. I'm not going to have it come out of my own words. I'm going to read to you select passages from this research paper that shed light on the actual origin of coronavirus, where we have to actually be looking. Okay, so we got to start out now. And this is where the research paper starts out in identifying the sequence, the genome sequences from the coronavirus, figuring out that it's 96 to 89% identical to bat CoV-Z C45 coronavirus. Okay, this is originally found in a Rhinophilus aphini bat, and it's very similar to the coronavirus now that's been identified that's spreading in the outbreak. Okay, that's why a lot of people say, "Oh, it came from bats," right? It came from bats. It looks like it's very similar to coronavirus in bats. And so now it's critical, the paper says, to study where the pathogen came from and how it passed on to humans. Because it's not identical. It's just very similar. So how did this happen? Now, an article published on The Lancet reported that 41 people in Wuhan were found to be infected, and 27 of them had contact with the Hunan seafood market. All right? So this is an article published in Lancet that Boutao Zhao and Li Zhao are referring to. 41 people in Wuhan were found to be infected at the onset of the outbreak. 27 of them had contact with that seafood market. So 33 out of the 585 samples collected in the market had that coronavirus. So not all of the samples collected had coronavirus at the market, but 33 out of 585. That's why everybody says, okay, well, the seafood market, that must have been the outbreak. But you have to wonder about those people that had coronavirus and had no contact at the seafood market. How did they get it? So that's a question. Now, the bats carrying the coronavirus, that's extremely similar, 96 to 89%, somewhere around there, similar to the coronavirus outbreak. They were originally found in Yunnan, Zhejiang province. Forgive my pronunciation. So both of those areas or provinces are over 900 kilometers away from the seafood market, according to Boutao Zhao and Li Zhao, this research paper. And so those bats are far away from the market. How did those bats get to the market? And the article points out the bats were not a food source in the city or at the market. They weren't traded at that market. And by the way, neither were that animal, the pigeon, or the pigeon, or that other scale kind of lizard animal, they say, could be a potential carrier of coronavirus. That thing wasn't sold at the market either. I read that in a different article. But back to the research paper, you have to understand that right now, if the bat wasn't sold at the market, and it's found over 900 kilometers away, and yet all these people in Wuhan come up positive for a coronavirus very similar to the bat, you got to ask yourself, how did the bat get into Wuhan if not in the animal market? Well, within 280 meters from the market, there was the Wuhan Center of Disease Control and Prevention. This is separate from the level 4 biolab. This is another lab, I guess, or it's the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That's what it is. 280 meters away from the market, according to Boutao Zhao and Li Zhao's research paper. Now, you can look up what they're doing at the Wuhan Center for Disease Control, and that's what they did in their paper. They looked it up, and in one of their studies, 155 bats were captured in Hubei province. Another 450 bats were captured in Zhejiang province. So you got bats that were captured far away, brought back into Wuhan at a Center for Disease Control in Wuhan, 280 meters away from the market. Okay, so now is it beginning to make sense for you? Now are you getting to see? I mean, maybe you already know this. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir. Maybe you're listening and hearing this for the first time, and you're scrambling on Google trying to see if this is all accurate. And I'm saying, yes, it is accurate. And I don't mean to scare you or panic you, because it doesn't mean it's a bioweapon. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily worse than it had originated, naturally, a zootic kind of natural manifestation of it. It could very well be a result of a vaccine they're working on. Maybe they're trying to prevent coronavirus and they're studying it to make it weaker, and then that got released. We don't really know what got released yet. If it was released from the lab, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily way more scary. That's what I'm trying to get at. It just means that we need to know so we can figure out the source of this thing and how better to fight it and combat it and treat it and collect a vaccine for it. If we do know exactly, who developed it and how it was developed, wouldn't that be a major advantage to us to create a cure or a vaccine? I would argue yes.
This is Kingston Country.
The Dan Kingston Podcast is brought to you by Traveling with Janice and Cruise Brothers. This is a great time of year to plan your summer vacations. Lots of great travel specials for cruises and tours. Call Traveling with Janice and Cruise Brothers for all these ideas for families, groups, weddings. 480-648-3324 or email travelingwithjanice@gmail.com. Back to the paper, research paper by Botao Zhao and Li Zhao. They're looking at these studies done at this Center for Disease Control in Wuhan, 280 meters away from the market, which is believed to be the outbreak epicenter. And the expert in collection, Tao Pi, described he was once attacked by bats, and the blood of a bat shot on his skin. He knew the extreme danger of the infection, so he quarantined himself for 14 days. And the paper goes on. In another accident, he quarantined himself again because bats peed on him. He was once thrilled for capturing a bat carrying a live tick. Okay, that's from the paper. So obviously you have a public report about what was going on at the Wuhan Center for Disease Control. They were working on bats that had coronavirus. We know bats' blood leaked onto the expert in charge and peed on him too. And so now it's starting to make more sense. You also have rumors, and not just rumors, but people have been convicted in China for selling laboratory meat to animal markets, by the way. Okay, that's not a conspiracy theory. People have gone to jail for that in China, selling lab meat that's been infected to markets for side money. Everybody's trying to make a hustle over there. Everybody's trying to cover something up, or it's a culture of corruption, and it's a culture of cheaters, honestly. It's not the people's fault. It's the government's fault for that. It's not capitalism. It's not communism. It's something very, very strange. And I don't think we can really recognize that society. Unless you spent a lot of time there, it's so foreign to how we understand society to operate. And that's what makes some of this scarier too, because there's so much mystery, not just of the virus, but over where the virus originated from. And there's a lot of mystery over China in a larger sense. They got concentration camps over there. It's horrible. I mean, it's called the Uyghur people. And it's a whole part of China where these people, they're Chinese. Many of them speak Chinese, but they're locked away in concentration camps, over 1 million of them. And there's studies being done, horrible medical experiments being done. And now it's worried the coronavirus could spread in those concentration camps. And look, we don't even hear anything about these concentration camps from China, from the news. Nobody talks about them. So you think that if coronavirus spread in one of these concentration camps, we'd be hearing about it? I guarantee you we would not be. And it is probably happening. We know that there was a case, at least one case of coronavirus in the concentration camp. This is the Xinjiang, I believe, region of China, but it's the Uyghur concentration camps of the Uyghur people. I know the name sounds kind of funny, but what's happening there is not funny at all. Medical experiments, horrible re-education centers that you would only equate with a horrible kind of authoritarian, communist Chinese government, or maybe you could equate it with Hitler and Nazism. Either way, it's not happy what's happening over there. And so now Wall Street's waking up to the fact in the world stocks are tumbling and people are asking questions. Where is this going to end? Is this thing just getting started or is it contained? And the more they look, the scarier it looks. That's the problem. That's why stocks are tumbling. And that's why this thing's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better.
Kingston Country. You've been listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast.
Dan Kingston here, asking you to do me a huge favor. Will you possibly rate the Dan Kingston Podcast on Apple Podcasts? Each new rating, believe it or not, really does have a major impact on the way Apple's algorithm recommends content. With just one quick click, you can help promote citizen journalism and end the stranglehold of the mainstream media. Together, we're going to do this. Thank you. I really appreciate your support.